Look at two men in the same parking lot. One of them steps out of an old Honda with faded paint, the kind of car most people would barely notice. He has lunch packed from home, a simple shirt, and a wallet that looks like it should have been replaced years ago. Nothing about him says millionaire. Nothing about him asks for attention. A few spaces away, another man climbs out of a leased German SUV. The shoes are new. The watch is polished. The clothes look expensive enough to make strangers assume he has made it. From the outside, he looks like the obvious winner. But here is the uncomfortable part. One of these men has a net worth north of $2 million. The other one is one missed paycheck away from watching everything collapse. And most people would guess wrong. That is the strange truth about wealth in America. Real wealth has learned how to go quiet. It does not always wear designer clothes. It does not always pull into the driveway in a brand new luxury car. It does not always live behind a gate or talk loudly about investments at dinner. In fact, the people who are genuinely rich often look almost ordinary. Sometimes they look cheap. Sometimes they look behind. Sometimes they look like they are still counting every dollar, even though their money has been quietly working for them for decades. And that is exactly why so many people misunderstand wealth. They confuse the appearance of money with the presence of money. They see the car, the watch, the vacation photos, the upgraded kitchen, the expensive shoes, and they assume those things are proof. But very often, those things are only proof of spending. They tell you money went out. They do not tell you how much stayed. Over the next 10 signs, you are going to learn how to recognize the difference. Not from someone's Instagram feed, not from the size of their house, not from the label on their shirt, but from the quiet behaviors that show up when a person has stopped performing success and started building real freedom. Because once you understand what real wealth actually looks like, you may never see an old car, a plain shirt, or a silent person at the dinner table the same way again. Before you can recognize quiet wealth, you have to separate two words most people treat as the same thing. Income is not wealth. Income is the money that comes in. It is loud. It is visible. It shows up in job titles, cars, trips, houses, dinners, and all the things people can point to when they want the world to believe they are doing well. Wealth is different. Wealth is the money that stays. It is the gap between what a person earns and what a person spends, multiplied by time. That is why a surgeon making $500,000 a year can still be financially fragile if every dollar is already spoken for. And it is why a plumber making far less can quietly become richer by saving and investing a steady part of every paycheck for years. That one difference explains why so many people are terrible at spotting real money. Right now, there are nearly 24 million millionaires living in the United States, according to recent global wealth research from UBS. America is creating more than 1,000 new millionaires a day. That works out to roughly 1 in every 15 American adults. Think about that for a moment. If you walked into a coffee shop with 30 people sitting inside, statistically, 2 of them could have a 7-figure net worth. But would you know who they were? Most people would not, because the typical millionaire is not always a celebrity, an athlete, or someone born into a trust fund. More often, it is the business owner who kept expenses low for 25 years, the retired teacher who never skipped a contribution, the nurse who invested before she spent, the welder who owned his shop and lived below his means long after he could have upgraded everything. They did not get there by looking rich. They got there by doing a few boring things with relentless consistency. And once you understand that, the first visible sign becomes almost impossible to ignore. The fastest way to misjudge someone's wealth is to look at the car they drive. Most people assume the expensive car belongs to the rich person. They see the luxury badge, the clean paint, the oversized wheels, the perfect interior, and they instantly connect it with success. But in real life, cars often reveal spending more than wealth, and sometimes they reveal the exact opposite of what people think. Look at where the car market sits now. The average new car in America crossed just over $50,000 at the end of 2025. The average monthly payment is now around $770. More than 1 in 5 new car buyers are paying over $1,000 a month, and nearly a quarter are stretching their loans out to 7 years or longer just to make the payment feel possible. That is not wealth. That is pressure wearing a nice paint job. The genuinely rich usually move differently. They do not need the driveway to announce their net worth. Research connected to the millionaire next door found that the typical millionaire spends only about 1% of their net worth on the car they drive. For someone worth $2 million, that points to a vehicle around $20,000, often bought lightly used and kept for many years. That is why so many quietly wealthy people end up driving brands like Toyota, Honda, and Ford. Not because they cannot afford more, but because those cars start every morning, cost less to maintain, and do their job without draining money that could be compounding somewhere else. Think about Curtis, a retired high school shop teacher who drives a 16-year-old pickup with a small dent in the tailgate. From the outside, he looks like a man carefully stretching a fixed pension. But his brokerage account tells another story. It sits deep into seven figures, built slowly across a 30-year career, one paycheck at a time. When people ask why he does not finally buy something new, his answer is simple. The truck gets him where he needs to go. So why hand a dealership $40,000 to solve a problem he does not have? That faded paint is not a sign of failure. That dent is not proof he fell behind. It is the visible receipt of a decision that helped fund his freedom. And this is where the question becomes uncomfortable. How many people have you judged as broke simply because their car was old? While they were quietly winning a money game, most people never even realized they were losing. Drive through the neighborhoods people usually connect with money, and you will see the version of wealth most of the world has been trained to admire. Big houses, perfect lawns, tall front doors, gated entrances, and windows that seem designed less for living and more for proving a point. But behind many of those doors, the truth is not always as impressive as the view from the street. A large house can hide a stretched budget. It can hide a mortgage that eats the paycheck before the month even begins. It can hide property taxes, insurance, maintenance, furniture, heating, cooling, and rooms that cost money every single day even when nobody uses them. The genuinely rich often do the opposite. They buy the house that works, not the house that impresses. They choose the modest home on the ordinary street. They buy far less than the bank says they can afford. And then, year after year, they let the difference grow somewhere else. That is the part most people miss. A smaller house is not always a smaller life. Sometimes it is the reason a person has a much bigger financial future. There is a famous example almost everyone has heard, but almost nobody copies. One of the most successful investors of the last century still lives in the same Omaha house he bought back in 1958 for around $31,500. He could buy almost any home on earth, but he stayed in the one that already did the job. And that instinct does not only exist among billionaires. It shows up in ordinary millionaires all over the country. The teacher who retires with a seven-figure portfolio often did it from a simple three-bedroom house, not a mansion. The business owner who quietly built wealth often lived in a place that looked normal from the outside because normal was enough. A bigger house feels like a reward, but for many people it becomes an anchor. Every extra bedroom means more taxes, more insurance, more repairs, more furniture, and more money that never gets the chance to compound. The genuinely rich understand that a home is both a place to live and a financial decision. They refuse to let the second part destroy the first. They would rather own a modest home with peace than live in an impressive house that keeps them financially trapped until they are old. Train your eye to notice this, and you will start seeing it everywhere. Genuinely wealthy people are often very hard to read at first glance. Their clothes do not announce them. Their watch, if they wear one at all, may look simple and practical. Their shoes are usually chosen because they last, not because they make strangers turn their heads. They are not using their body as a billboard. No giant logos, no desperate signals, no outfit built to make the room ask how much it cost. Most of the time, they wear plain, well-made basics. The kind of clothing that looks almost invisible because it is not trying to perform. And that quietness is often the point. A person who feels financially secure does not need a stranger to validate it. They do not need a brand name across their chest to feel important. They already know their number. They know how much is invested, how many months they could live without working, and how much freedom their money has quietly created for them. That kind of confidence does not need decoration. Now compare that with how status spending usually works. The louder the logo, the louder the message. The more obvious the luxury item, the more it can become a way of trying to convince the world, and sometimes even the person wearing it, that they have reached a place they may not have truly reached yet. This is why the richest person in the room may look like they are about to run errands. Not because they cannot afford better, but because they no longer care what anyone assumes. There is even a name for this now. People call it stealth wealth. It is the quiet style of people who can buy almost anything, but no longer feel the need to be seen buying it. A plain sweater with no visible brand, a simple bag without loud hardware, shoes chosen for durability instead of applause. These can be stronger signals than the flashy things most people chase. Because once someone has real money, the need to look rich often fades. And when that need disappears, what remains can look almost boring from the outside. But boring is not always broke. Sometimes boring is the uniform of someone who has already won. Listen carefully at any dinner, any family gathering, any weekend cookout, and you will notice something strange. There is always someone who wants the room to know what they spent. They mention the price of the trip. They bring up the cost of the renovation. They talk about the bonus, the deal, the car, the upgrade, the expensive restaurant, or the house they almost bought. Sometimes they do it directly. Sometimes they hide it inside a casual story. But the message is still the same. They want people to know money moved through their hands. The genuinely wealthy are usually not that person. When money comes up, they often become quiet. Not awkward, not nervous, just quiet. They let the conversation pass by without needing to place their number on the table. And that silence is not accidental. Part of it is strategic. Talking openly about money can invite comparison, resentment, judgment, pressure, and requests. People with real assets understand that every unnecessary detail creates attention they do not need. If no one knows what they have, no one can build expectations around it. But there is another reason, and it runs even deeper. For people who have built real wealth, money often stops feeling exciting. It becomes less like fireworks and more like plumbing. It is a system in the background. It works quietly. It supports the rest of life, so it does not need to be announced every time it functions. Think about Walt. He spent 30 years running a small heating and cooling business before eventually selling it. If you ask him what he does now, he just shrugs and says he is retired. Spend an afternoon with him, and you would never guess that he still owns the building where his old shop used to operate. He rents it out and collects more monthly income from that one property than many people earn from a full-time job. But Walt does not advertise it. He drives one of the cheaper trucks on the lot. He splits an appetizer. He lets other people talk about money, and he never reveals his hand. That is what real wealth often looks like once it has nothing left to prove. The people loudly performing success are often still chasing it or trying to convince themselves they have reached it. The people who have actually arrived tend to lower their voice. So the next time someone refuses to talk about what they earn, what they own, or what they paid, do not assume there is nothing behind the silence. Sometimes the silence is the signal. This is the heart of the entire difference between looking rich and being rich. The person trying to look rich often sends money into things everyone can see: a newer car, a better watch, a bigger television, a remodeled kitchen, a trip that looks good in photos. The money becomes visible for a moment, and then it is gone. The genuinely rich send their money somewhere else. They send it into places most people will never see at dinner, never notice in a driveway, and never recognize across a room. Retirement accounts, investment accounts, health savings accounts, broad index funds, boring statements, quiet balances, numbers that sit behind passwords instead of logos. That is why their wealth can be enormous and still completely invisible. Look at what the system allows in 2026. A person can put $24,500 into a 401k. They can add $7,500 into an IRA. If they have a high deductible health plan, they can put $4,400 into a health savings account as an individual, or $8,150 for a family. That health savings account can be especially powerful because it offers a tax break going in, tax-free growth while the money sits, and tax-free withdrawals when used for medical costs. And for many workers, there is also an employer match, which can push the combined retirement limit much higher, all the way up to $72,000 a year. Most people hear those numbers and treat them like impossible ceilings. The quietly rich treat them like targets. And once they fill the tax advantage accounts, they do not stop. They keep going. They move money into regular taxable brokerage accounts and keep buying broad, boring index funds month after month, year after year, decade after decade. The secret is not that they are stronger than everyone else. The secret is that they built a system that does not depend on willpower. The money leaves every paycheck automatically. It gets invested before it ever has a chance to sit in checking. They do not see it, so they do not miss it. They do not have to decide every 2 weeks whether to be responsible. The decision was already made once, and the system keeps repeating it for them. That single design choice changes everything. Most people say they will invest whatever is left at the end of the month. But by the end of the month, life has usually found a way to spend it. The genuinely rich reverse the order. They pay themselves first, automatically, and then live on what remains. That is why a person can look completely average and still be building extraordinary wealth in silence. Imagine Nadia, a hospital nurse with a normal salary, a hand-me-down sedan, and coffee she brings from home. Her co-workers may assume she is simply careful because money is tight. What they do not see is that she has spent more than 15 years maxing every account available to her. They do not see the automatic contributions. They do not see the index funds. They do not see the balance quietly crossing a level that would shock them if they knew. Her money is not on her wrist. It is not in her driveway. It is not stitched across her clothes. It is working. And that is why people keep misreading her. They are looking for wealth in the places where money goes to disappear, while her actual wealth is sitting in places designed to grow. So ask yourself this: when you look at someone, are you seeing what they bought? Are you seeing what they kept? Because those are not the same thing. Now look at the other side of the equation. A person can make a strong income and still be trapped if too much of that income already belongs to someone else. The lender gets paid first. The credit card company gets paid first. The car loan gets paid first. The buy now, pay later balance gets paid first. By the time the money reaches the person who earned it, most of it has already been claimed. That is not freedom. That is a financial life built inside a cage. Americans now carry more than $1.2 trillion in credit card debt, a record level. The average interest rate on balances people actually carry sits around 22%, and roughly 6 out of 10 card users carry a balance from one month to the next. That means millions of households are not just paying for what they bought. They are paying extra month after month for the privilege of having already spent money they did not have. At that kind of interest rate, a purchase can become painfully expensive very quickly. A $1,000 couch left sitting on a credit card can quietly turn into the cost of 2 couches in just a few years. But there is still only one couch in the living room. The genuinely rich live on the opposite side of that system. They may use credit cards all the time. Sometimes they run thousands of dollars through them every month. But they are not doing it because they need to borrow. They are doing it for points, cash back, protection, and convenience. Then they pay the statement in full before interest has a chance to touch a single dollar. That is the difference. The broke-looking wealthy person may have an old car, plain clothes, and a simple house, but they also may have almost no payments chasing them, no heavy credit card balance, no unnecessary car loan, no high-interest debt eating tomorrow's income. And when debt does not control your morning, your paycheck starts to feel different. Every dollar becomes something you can direct, not something already promised away. There is a calm that comes with owing almost nothing. It shows in the way a person breathes when the bill arrives. It shows in the way they make decisions without panic. A new truck in the driveway can fake status. Freedom from payments cannot be faked. Money problems reveal the truth faster than almost anything else. When the transmission fails on a Monday morning, when the water heater floods the basement overnight, when the job disappears with almost no warning, most households feel the ground shake immediately. One unexpected bill can turn into a crisis, not because the bill is unusual, but because there is no cushion waiting behind it. That is why calm can be such a powerful sign. The genuinely rich may not enjoy bad news, but they do not collapse under it the same way. They do not panic over every repair. They do not need to put the emergency on a credit card and hope future income can clean up the mess. Their calm is not magic. It comes from money sitting quietly in the background, ready before the problem arrives. That money is the emergency fund, and the quietly wealthy usually treat it differently from everyone else. They do not leave serious cash in an account earning almost nothing. They keep many months of expenses available, but they often keep that money in a high-yield savings account, where it can earn around 4% while still staying safe and accessible. That detail matters more than people think. The national average savings rate is about a third of 1%. Some of the largest traditional banks pay as little as 1/100th of 1%. At those rates, cash is barely doing anything. Put $20,000 in a competitive high-yield account, and it can earn about $800 in a year. Leave the same $20,000 at the national average, and it earns around $76. Park it at a big bank paying almost nothing, and the reward for the entire year may be about $2. Same balance, different system, completely different result. That is how two people can look similar from the outside while their financial lives move in opposite directions. One is quietly paid for being prepared. The other is slowly punished for not paying attention. So when someone handles an unexpected bill with steady calm, do not assume they are just relaxed by nature. They may have built the one thing that gives calm a financial foundation, a buffer. And a person with a buffer is much harder to shake. There is a quiet shopping habit among genuinely wealthy people that can confuse people at first. Sometimes they do spend more up front. They buy the well-made boots, the solid wood table, the reliable appliance, the quality coat, the simple item that is built to survive years of use instead of just looking new for one season. From the outside, that can look like they are not being frugal, but the real move happens after they buy it. They stop buying. They keep the item for 10 or 15 years. They repair it when it needs attention. They maintain it. They let it earn its place in their life over time. Meanwhile, the person trying to look rich may buy the cheaper version first, replace it when it breaks, upgrade it when a trend changes, and end up spending more money across the same years just to own worse things. Cheap becomes expensive the moment you have to buy it again and again. The genuinely rich understand cost as a long-term number, not just the number printed on the tag. They know that a $60 repair on a great appliance can be smarter than an $800 replacement that may be built worse than the old one. They know the value of a good tailor, a reliable mechanic, or a cobbler who can bring worn shoes back to life. Think about Marisol, who bought one high-quality leather bag 14 years ago and still carries it every day. The corners are worn. The leather is scuffed. A stranger might assume she cannot afford a new one. But the truth is that she has spent less on bags in 14 years than her coworker spends in 2, because her coworker replaces a trendy bag every season. That is the difference. One person is chasing new, the other is buying durability. And in a culture trained to upgrade constantly, repair can look like struggle. Keeping old things can look like being behind. But for the quietly wealthy, it is often a form of intelligence. They are not impressed by novelty for its own sake. They are impressed by anything that earns its keep over years of hard use. That habit does not look flashy, but across a lifetime, it quietly saves a fortune. Pay attention to who can say no without falling apart. That one habit tells you more about a person's financial life than most people realize. The genuinely rich are often very comfortable declining the small, social, status-driven expenses that drain everyone else. A destination bachelor party in another state may simply not fit the plan. A group dinner at a restaurant that feels too expensive for the week may get a polite pass. The newest upgrade, the one everyone else seems to be buying because everyone else is buying it, may not interest them at all, and they say no without drama, no long apology, no nervous explanation, no desperate attempt to prove they could afford it if they wanted to. They just decline and move on. From the outside, this can be one of the most misunderstood behaviors on the entire list. People may assume they are cheap. They may assume money is tight. They may even assume the person saying no is falling behind socially or financially. But the truth is often the opposite. They can afford many of those things because they spent years saying no to the things that did not matter. They understand that every yes has a cost, not just the dollars spent today, but the future those dollars could have built if they had stayed invested. Lifestyle creep is one of the most reliable killers of wealth. It happens quietly. Income rises and spending rises with it. A better apartment, a newer car, more expensive dinners, nicer hotels, bigger gifts, upgraded subscriptions. At first, each change feels small, but over time, the raise disappears, and the person earning more somehow feels no freer than before. The quietly rich resist that pattern. Think about Dean. He got a substantial raise 3 years ago, but almost nothing about his daily life changed. Same apartment, same car, same weekly routine. His friends upgraded their lives as soon as their incomes rose, and to them, Dean looked almost stubbornly cheap. But Dean was not depriving himself. He was directing the entire raise into investments before he ever saw it. He still spent generously on the few things he truly cared about, but on everything else he was willing to disappoint the crowd. That is not weakness. That is the discipline that creates freedom in silence. Here is the deepest sign of all. At some point, genuinely wealthy people stop performing wealth because the performance was always only a substitute for the real thing. And once they finally have the real thing, they no longer need the substitute. They do not need the loud car. They do not need the obvious watch. They do not need the impressive story at dinner. They do not need the bigger house just because the bank says they qualify for it. They do not need to keep proving to people that they are successful, because real wealth has already changed the parts of life that matter most. It gives them time. It gives them flexibility. It gives them the ability to walk away from a toxic job, a bad client, or a deal that does not feel right. It gives them the power to take an ordinary Tuesday off without asking anyone for permission. It gives them the ability to help a child through college without drowning the family in loans, or quietly support a parent who is struggling without needing the world to applaud. And that is the part surface signals can never show you. A better car can impress people for a moment. A louder watch can turn heads for a second. A bigger house can make someone look important from the street. But those things are not the deepest prize. The deepest prize is freedom. The freedom to stop worrying, the freedom to stop pretending, the freedom to stop measuring your life against people who may be secretly carrying more debt than peace, the freedom to choose what matters and ignore what does not. That is why genuinely rich people often look so ordinary. They are no longer being pulled by the status race. They are not anxious when the bill arrives. They are not performing for the table. They are not quietly calculating whether they can really afford the thing they just agreed to buy. That low background hum of money stress that follows so many people through life has gone quiet for them. And in its place, there is a steadiness that no amount of spending can fake. They are not broke. They did not lose. They are simply finished trying to prove anything to anybody. Once this clicks, the world starts to look different. You begin to notice the faded car that was paid off years ago, the plain clothes chosen for comfort instead of applause, the quiet person who never joins the money conversation, the easy no to expensive plans that drain everyone else, the calm reaction when something breaks, because there is already money set aside for the things life throws without warning. Those details are not always signs that someone lost the game. Sometimes they are fingerprints of someone who quietly won it. So go back to that parking lot from the beginning. The man stepping out of the leased German SUV, wearing designer everything, looking like success from a distance. And the man in the older Honda, carrying lunch from home, with a wallet that looks almost embarrassing to anyone trained to judge wealth by surface signals. You can read it differently now. You can see why the old car might not be a weakness. It might be a paid-off decision. You can see why the packed lunch might not be desperation. It might be discipline. You can see why the plain clothes might not be lack. They might be peace. You can see why silence around money might not mean there is nothing to say. It might mean there is nothing left to prove. Every sign points back to the same uncomfortable truth. Looking rich and being rich are two completely different skills. Looking rich is easy to perform for a while. You can finance it, lease it, charge it, post it, and dress it up. But being rich is quieter. It is built through the money you keep, the debt you avoid, the accounts you fill, the lifestyle you refuse to inflate, and the systems you build so the smart choice happens automatically, even when you are tired. And underneath all 10 signs is one final advantage. These people understand how money really works. They understand that debt can compound against you while investing compounds for you. They understand why tax-advantaged accounts matter. They understand why a checking account alone will not build freedom. They understand why willpower is weak, but a system can keep working for decades. They understand that the game was never about impressing strangers. It was about buying back your life. That is what quiet wealth is really about. Not the car, not the watch, not the house, not the clothes, but the freedom to stop worrying, stop pretending, and start living on your own terms. And the best moment to begin learning those rules is not someday, it is right now.